Hey guys, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. On this episode, we have Edward from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and he had a few Bigfoot encounters and experiences that took place on his family's property, and his family has also experienced Bigfoot activity as well. People have theorized that Bigfoot activity could possibly be a generational curse, and it could run in the family. Do you think that's possible? Let me know down in the comments below. I've often wondered if this type of phenomenon could happen because of our chemical makeup or our genetics, and possibly it's passed down through our bloodline. And yeah, that's scary to think about. A lot of people talk about being marked and tagged by these creatures, and they do seem to follow people around. I have spoken with people who have had Bigfoot encounters, and later on their grandchildren start having experiences, or other family members, so it does make me wonder. Of course, the channel is called Sasquatch Theory for a reason, and here nobody's answer is necessarily wrong, because we're all trying to figure out what's going on, and sometimes we dive into the supernatural to theorize as to the possibilities of what could possibly be happening. But yeah, if you guys can, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime. Alright, with all that being said, let's dive straight into Edward's Bigfoot encounters from the state of Arkansas. Edward, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I'd like to talk about our two encounters, one involving myself and another one a few years later involving my mother, what she told me directly that day when it happened. This was in Washington County, Arkansas, east of Fayetteville, between Fayetteville and Elkins, in the Wyman community area. And the first time was that I experienced when I was approximately 6 years old, after we had initially moved out there from Springdale, Arkansas, outside of Fayetteville. And I had gotten up to get a drink of water. I was thirsty, went into the kitchen, reached up to get a glass out of the cabinet, and then I got that feeling that, sometimes you get the feeling something's staring at you or watching you, like a person or whatever. Well, I turn around and look over towards the sink, and the kitchen window was a double window above the sink, and I saw the reflection or the glowing of two red eyes looking at me. And when I did that and looked over there, that just looked away, whatever it was. I think it was a Sasquatch because of the height. The eyes were above the ground, and it just went. And my initial reaction was to yell, but without getting into family details, I figured if I yelled and tried to explain, I wouldn't have been believed by my immediate family, unfortunately. And when I mentioned about the level above the ground, I am approximately 6'2", and the last time I lived there, I could go to that same window, and I have to stand on my tiptoes and stretch to look in even remotely close to the level those eyes were approximately.
Yeah.
And that's that one.
Well, that's pretty creepy. How big were the eyes?
Well, I would say at least quarter sized, because it's hard to tell. You can't, it's hard when you just see the eyes and everything around there is black. It's hard to get a good perspective, but I would say approximately a quarter diameter. I'm sorry, not a quarter inch. And maybe about 6 to 8 inches apart.
Yeah. And what kind of feeling did you get when you saw the eye shine?
Well, it was like a little bit scared, like, what in the world is this? It's like, because, you're growing up in a rural area, and even before that, a semi-rural area, and being out there when my grandmother was still alive, you're used to farm animals, deer, whatever. But it's like, I remember that because it's like all the time. It's like, what in the world could that have been? You know what I mean? There, because it's like, I mean, I've thought about it. I mean, my uncle next door, he had cattle, but it's like their eyes they're not directly forward. They got them where they can look forward, but they're kind of oval, in the pupils and that when they're looking straight ahead.
Yeah.
And then at night, I've helped look for cattle and you spotlight them. Their eyes are greenish yellow, kind of, not red.
Yeah. And what did you think it was?
Well, like I said, I puzzled out probably a Sasquatch, because even back then, that was in like 1971 or so, and there was a lot of stuff on TV and whatever about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, but it's not something that was always on my mind. But then you think, what in the world? It's like, what was that? You know,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I know some people have discussed them possibly being supernatural, paranormal, demonic. I'm not ruling that out completely either.
Yeah. I would have thought it was a demon. I mean, there's people who have claimed to see other people who have red eyes, and they say that's like possession when that happens.
Well, yeah, and there's one thing I'm going to try to be okay. My ex fiance, she mentioned her first husband, who was a real, to put it politely, jackwagon. He would get mad over petty stuff, and she said when he got really mad, his pupils would start glowing red or flashing red. And that was inside a house, not bright light shining on them. So yeah, I could go with that too.
Yeah, I've heard
I
that
mean,
before, that when people get mad, their eyes would turn red, and it's terrifying, like people can't control their anger, and all of a sudden their eyes turn red. It almost makes you think if there's something else at play, like something takes them over.
well, yeah, to extent I believe that even average people, that does open you up to influence and demonic influence. I think so.
Yeah. But with the
Yeah.
Sasquatch, it's hard to say if their eyes just like are self-illuminated, and they come in a range of different colors, whether it's green, yellow, silver, red, orange, and
That's possible too, because we don't really have a good database for that we could call reliable, as far as what would be quote unquote accepted as scientific. And I use that term loosely anymore.
yeah. And I want to say that I do believe that you've seen the red eyes. There's an organization out there. They got a show called Finding Bigfoot, and on one of the episodes, Matt Moneymaker interviewed a guest, and the guy said he saw red eyes, and Matt Moneymaker pretty much dismissed his encounter and said, well, I know he's lying, because Sasquatch have yellow green glowing eyes, not red eyes. And that guy was kind of beside himself, and he was on his property, so it's like, man, how can you show up to somebody's place and tell them that they didn't see what they saw?
Oh yeah, that's kind of bad, because I kind of think that I don't rule anything out, but I've also, one of your shows they talked about, it was like a Native American deal to deem Sasquatches as empty vessels or something.
Hmm. Yeah.
As far as souls and spirits, that I don't know, because if they're that intelligent, I don't know. But if they're susceptible to demonic possession, I don't rule anything out either way.
Yeah, that's a great theory. Can the Sasquatch be possessed by demons like humans? And that's a difficult one. Maybe if there is like human DNA in them and angel DNA like some people claim, that's a possibility. It's really hard to say. Like you said earlier, we don't really have a database for all this, and we're all just kind of wondering what the heck's going on out there.
Oh yeah, that's true. And also, don't ask me right now to remember the exact chapter and verse in the Bible, but when Jesus cast the demons out of that one guy, they went into hogs, and then they right off of a cliff, but they went into animals.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. And I'm not really sure what part of the Bible that is, but I know what you're talking about. And basically, the guy had a bunch of demons, and Jesus cast them out into the hogs, and the hogs ran off the cliff. And
Yeah, now that right there is also the question: did they go willingly into the hogs?
yeah, most likely.
Because but I mean, well, if Jesus was there and says out over, and I don't know if he pointed or not, but said over there, I know they would have went there.
Yeah, I never thought about that before. Like, can demons possess animals? And I guess that verse kind of explains that they can. And I guess they couldn't stand the presence of Jesus, so they got out of the man's body and went into the hogs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else happened after this red eye encounter?
Well, the next one, I'd like to talk about the one my mother had that she related to me. And that was about 25 years later in the mid to late 90s. And what happened then, and I'm going to preface this by when it was is in the summertime. I was helping a friend of mine haul hay, or actually his dad more exactly. We're working a crew down there, and it was about August, I think, or early August. And everything was dry. Everybody was hauling hay. I noticed that when I drove down there in the morning, they were hauling or cutting or, baling and or raking it. And what happened was around noon, we were stopping for a lunch break, and my friend's mother, who came out and yelled, "Ed, your mother's on the phone and she's really scared about something." So I immediately go in there and I started talking to her. I asked her what's wrong, and she asked me, "Can a bear run on its hind legs?" And I said, "What? What's going on?" And she explained to me she was just by coincidence happened to be the same window in the kitchen, and she was washing dishes, and not wanting to go down a bunny trail on this, but we used to have a cat, and that was one of her partly tame outside inside cats that would follow her all around. And if it was outside and she was inside, it'd be out on the windowsill wherever she was in the house. Well, the cat was on that windowsill, and she'd look up at it, talk to it, whatever, how it is with pets. And she was doing her dishes and had her head down, but kind of noticed the cat just froze up and just tried to flatten itself against the ledge of the windowsill on the outside. And she looks up at the same time and sees about roughly shoulder and head up of a hairy creature run alongside there on the other side of this old car that was in the driveway at the time. And then she looked and saw it run, and this was on its hind legs, but crouched down a little bit, down the carport into the woods behind the house. And she immediately ran to the door, locked all the doors, being obviously scared of what is it. And then she called me. And when we were talking, I asked, well, what did it look like? And she said it had long, shaggy, reddish hair, And I asked, well, what could you tell what it looked? And she said, well, just like it had a head. It wasn't. She couldn't describe it as a bear. It had more of like a flat face, like a, I don't want to say person or gorilla because it was so hairy and shaggy. The way she described it to me was like, that's not anything around there normal. That's for sure. And again, that car, for a description of height, that was an old Pontiac Bonneville, and I think the hood on them, that's an old big, what they used to call a land yacht, if you know what I mean there.
Yeah.
And it, so I was saying that even crouched down the shoulder, the bottom of the shoulder or partial arm, it would have been still a good 3.5, 4 feet above the ground. And then what I did, I got, of course, this is what drove me nuts. It was hay hauling time. The ground is dry and hard. I get up there as quick as I could, and I start looking around there. I could not find one track at all. But then again, the between it being on the driveway and everything being relatively dry, is like I could not find a footprint or anything. And that point of my life, I did have some experience doing tracking. So normally, like mainly people, but yeah, that was something right there.
Yeah. And did she ever say that it possibly wasn't a bear, like it could have been maybe a Sasquatch?
Oh yeah. In fact, I started saying, well, she didn't say. She just asked if it was a bear could run on its hind legs, and I told her no. And then we were trying to. She was trying to figure out, well, what was it? And she wasn't doubting it was a Sasquatch. Really, it was just that, for she was obviously in shock a little bit at that time, and I just. Well, oh gosh, I hate to bring this up. It's a movie and it's kind of a comedy, and a lot of it's, I would say, not right for the subject. But she saw that movie Harry and the Hendersons. If you ever remember that movie about the Sasquatch,
Mm-hmm.
it was goofy. But anyway, she was like, "That's what I saw." It was obviously something ape-like, but upright to her.
Yeah, and that's wild. It was from the window that you seen the red eyes, and I wonder what its intentions was in that moment. What do you think the creature was doing there?
I don't know. Like, okay, let's say one thing, if it was demonic, it was probably just, I don't know, looking, or I don't know what they think. I really don't. But if it was, I'll just say, if it was just a Sasquatch, quote unquote, it's probably looking at that little naked hairy monkey. Because I'm, being similar in shape is like, what, not that it didn't see stuff like that before, but I don't know if I look that much different or what. I'm saying I look like an ape, but back then when I was younger, I had like very light blonde hair at that point in my life. So I don't know whether it was curious, malevolent, or what. I just got that feeling like you're being looked at, which isn't the first time that was not the last or first time it happened to me. Being out in the woods and that in Arkansas too.
Yeah. So you're saying that you've seen the red eyes again, or what do you mean? It's not the first time it's happened, or what else has happened?
Well, oh gosh, I can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll go into that then. This was over in the county line between Madison and Franklin County, and there were a couple of cases. One where I was out there, and I will just deem it coyote hunting. And I was walking along this kind of like a slope, and it went down in a hollow. I was walking along there, and there was a bunch of those what most people usually call pawpaw bushes or trees there. And again, I get that feeling something's staring at me, but this is more like not too happy. Something's there feeling that I was on the one end of. And I go to turn around, and as I do, I notice something shuffle off down the hill, and I could not get a clear look at what it was. At first, I thought, well, that's too slow for a deer, and I thought something lumbered downhill, and I thought, well, it's probably a bear, because I know there's bears around there, but was a silver black color, more silverly looking than black. And I got the feeling, thinking back there, yeah, that was probably a Sasquatch.
Yeah. What did it look like?
All I could see was probably would have been the shoulders of it, and it was like about almost like the appearance of a silverback gorilla going down off the hill. It was kind of obscured by some of the brush and bushes there, but or you want to call them bushes or trees. Those like those pawpaw trees are not exactly very sturdy or tall usually.
Mm-hmm. And did the trees have fruit on it?
Really, at that time, checking them for fruit was not on my mind.
Yeah, I wonder if the creature was there seeking out the pawpaws, because I heard they're actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, I've actually eaten them before.
Yeah, and whenever you said it looked like a silverback gorilla, was it black with like silver going down its back, or can you kind of describe that?
It was more like overall a silver tone to it.
Okay.
Like the kind of longish hair, that's a silver gray coloring. I didn't really notice much black, but like I said, it was obscured somewhat by the brush, if you want to call it that. Scrub trees or brush.
Yeah, and was it on all fours or was it upright?
I would guess it was probably upright or possibly squatted a little bit, because it's really all I could see was the general shape of it moving. But like I said, it had a lumbering gait to it, and going downhill, I figured it was trying to move away slow enough not to make it much noise, but as far as how it was actually moving on two legs or four, it'd be very difficult or impossible to tell.
Yeah.
It was just too obscured.
And what time of year did this occur?
That would have been in the late spring.
Okay. And whenever you said Madison and Franklin County, is that in Arkansas?
Oh yes, that's in Arkansas, and it's right on the Madison Franklin County line. In that area where I was at, there's an area called Hare Mountain and Fly Gap, and that's in that area. In fact, it was just not too far off of what's known as the Ozark Highlands Trail.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I ask is because there's a Franklin County and a Madison County in Missouri, and they both have Bigfoot reports.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah. Okay. So, have you had any paranormal experiences or any encounters with UFOs and aliens or shadow people, anything like that?
Oh, well, actually, yes. If I got this term for some of this stuff, I call them spirit dreams, because they're very vivid and in full color, not black and white. And, see, people have been talking about this term dogmen, and most of those involve something like a dogman. I just usually refer to it as a demon, but it was like almost like a dog man like werewolf like demon, and that was at the old property I sold also.
Yeah, if you would tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. All right, now this is gonna sound, I'll just admit it, even to me, because I can't explain why they went this way, but it's kind of off the wall, but I'm gonna say what happened. One, I had a dream where all of a sudden, like smack boom, I'm in what was the den in front of the fireplace, and I'm in almost like a wrestling hold or arm lock, like one arm locked around the other arm of both of us with one of them things. And I get this crazy idea, and here's what I did: I bit it, and then I pulled back, and I'll just say, in that dream, it didn't taste very good. It was about like what I would consider fire and brimstone tasting, like bleh, like trying to eat out of an ashtray. And all what happened was I pulled back, it looked at me, round eyed and scared, and then just poof left.
Yeah, and that was a dream, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, that was a dream.
Oh, okay.
Definitely yeah, yeah. All of this, I'll say it was a dream. And then I also had another one, I'll say similar, but oh golly. Okay. What it is this is like one of those dreams where you think you're almost awake though, but I wasn't, thankfully, the way it went down. And I was in my bed, and the way my bed used to be, I would be facing away from the window in my room, which was a good sized window itself, like they used to call a picture window or a small picture window. And on the other side, I had a dresser with a good sized mirror so I could look at it and see what was behind me in the yard. Well, in this dream, I'm waking up, like I said, it's a dream. And I see this creature, like a werewolf like creature, go past the window, and I can almost hear it like growling, or like it had a growling, chattering sound to it. And I jump up and I say, "What the heck?" I look and I see it moving across the yard towards this little creek there that has some brush. And again, not me really being in control of my body, I literally jump. It's like the glass or nothing is there, and I leap out the window, and I also happen to have a gun that I used to at one point sleep with under my pillow, and I started shooting at it. And then I wake up like, what the heck was that about? That's that's what I and like I said, I do it and I have no control over it.
Yeah, that is strange. And
Yeah, I know.
there could be a connection there. Maybe something was getting into your dreams. Was this the same house where you seen the red eyes?
Oh yes, it's the same one. This all happened out there between Fayetteville and Elkins, out in Washington County, in that area. Same house.
Yeah, that's terrifying. I've heard people say that dogmen can get into your dreams, but I don't know. I haven't
Well,
had that experience.
well, and this is what I can't figure out. I'm not saying I'm anything special, but I wasn't afraid. Like I said, when I said, like, what the heck, is like I got PO'd. It's like, what are you doing in my property? You know, so I just don't know about that one. I mean, I know, but it's like I still can't figure that out. And I don't know. I just allegedly I've got some really mixed up ancestry too. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, because I was hearing some people also talking about Native American blood seems to be more predisposed to that, but I don't know if I got any Native American blood. I never did an ancestry test. But the oddity is I'm adopted. I was adopted at birth. And the only educated guess I can go by my birth name is I've got some Scotch, Irish, and Norse ancestry.
Yeah. I've heard that too, and there could be a connection there with the Native American blood or whether you're Rh negative, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Just well, I think there's something about bloodlines that can affect that too. Like in your because there's something biblical about that too. About generational deals. I've also heard in some denominations they use the term generational curses that can be carried over unintentionally. So
Yeah. I believe that the
that
Bible talks about that sin can be passed down through generations, and it kind of sounds like genetics to me.
yeah, it can be because oh gosh, I'm about to open up another can of worms on my opinions and stuff. I've also had dreams that I don't see how it could be anything but generational memories because they go far back, way far back. Because what the dreams been about are probably pre-flood.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, it's like dreaming about about how they say things supposedly were before the flood. And I say supposedly because everybody's got a little bit different theory on this. But like the trees being about like the red oaks and sequoias, all the trees were about that size for an average size, like several hundred feet tall and 20, 30 feet around. Uh, the ground, everything being alive. It's like you go look in a creek or a river and it's teeming with different fish and that. I just, oh, yeah, it's kind of, I won't say difficult, but I've got to draw back on my memory on this. But yeah, I've had some doozies with that regard, and even some of the other experiences about like talking about demonic entities and that. Yeah, just stuff that just reminded me of what. Oh, I don't know want to say like just dark evil creatures and people fighting them, and then some people not fighting them, some people siding with them. It's just, and I found out that's not uncommon for people to have dreams like that. I've actually one time, and this is like 25, 30 years ago. Well, couldn't be really 30. I'm just kind of figuring when I was able to get online decently. I actually looked up pre-flood dreams, and there was a website that used to be up, and it covered two authors that had pre-flood dreams, and one of them was Robert E. Howard. Another one was J.R.R. Tolkien, which I had no idea. I know both of them covered fiction. Like I said, I know fiction, but I don't know how that connection is. Both of them generally have the same ancestry I do as far as being, Celtic, Irish, English, whatever mix. I think Tolkien was more Welsh, but I don't know what that is exactly as far as Great Britain goes. As far as ancestry. So that, like I said, that's a kind of mystery there. Like I said, I've experienced it, but do I know exactly why? At one time, actually, this was kind of, I don't want to say humorous, but odd, is that I was talking with my mother when she was still alive about those type of dreams I used to have when I was a kid. And she said, "Well, you must have been reading too many of them Lord of the Rings books." And I said, "Mom, that was some of that was happening before I even read any of them."
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
when you're a little kid and you don't know how to handle that it kind of scares the heck out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think the creature that your mom encountered is the same one that was looking through the window, possibly?
It's possible it might be the same one, but it's been discussed online, and that is that where that area is. I should also say there's a lot of water areas around there. There's Lake Sequoia, and there's two branches of the White River, and there's what's known as Richland Creek, of course, again in Arkansas, in Washington County. And in fact, that mountain I used to live on, okay, this might narrow it down. It'll be okay. Round Mountain. That mountain, I mean, almost would be an island if it wasn't for one short bluff area. There could have been one, it could be more than one moving around there.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a group of them moving through the area.
Because down in down along the river, I've known people that have had weird stuff happen, and it's like like the rock throwing deal that people report.
Mm-hmm.
The same guy I was hauling hay for, later on, he was down fishing. He had that property his went down to the White River, and he talked about uh something lobbing rocks at him when he was down fishing over there.
Yeah.
And so that, and I also had another, well, not neighbor, but another person I knew that lived on the east side of Round Mountain. And again, he had property that went down to that Richland Creek I mentioned. And one time he asked me, coincidentally, it had to do with bears. And there's this guy, I'll just refer to him as Paul, came up to me and said, "Hey, bro, do you know if we got any bears around here?" And I said, "No, why?" I said, "Well, my dogs came back up to the house, and these were like, I think, two or three pit bull mixes he had." And he said, "They looked like something beat the fire out of them." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, they came back all dirty, bruised up, and scratched up." I said, "I don't know. It's possible," because I told him, "Paul, you got those bluffs and little caves on your property." And so that might have been not a bear, but more like a Sasquatch. That's just up in there at that point, though. I just don't know.
Yeah. And there's been a
But
lot of Bigfoot reports from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. And I also vaguely remember. Now, this is when I was a real little kid, and there's possibly two creatures are the same, but White River in Arkansas, it goes up. Where it starts is in that area. It's like what's known as West Fork in Washington County, and then it goes up in that odd way. It goes up, the tributaries mesh together. They go through two or three lakes, and then back, I think even part of southern Missouri, but I'm not sure. No, I don't think so. I think there's Beaver Lake, and then Bull Shoals Lake, but it curves around and then comes back down towards the mouth of the Arkansas River near the Mississippi River. And there's a White River monster term in my area, or there used to be years ago. And then there's another term for another one down near the mouth of the White River. And that one, I'm not sure. Sometimes I've heard it described as more of a river monster. I don't know, cryptid type deal. But the one by me, I believe it was described as some ape-like creature, but I can't find anything currently. And that was like in the old papers when I was a little kid. And a lot of people, you know how it can be dismissed. They'll usually say, oh, well, those guys were out fishing at night and they must have been drunk or smoking wacky tobacco. It was what marijuana used to be called back then. You know, it just.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what branch of the White River that was, because, like I said, that was when I was a real little kid. But sometimes when you're a kid, you pick up hearing anything exciting when you hear the term monster or that.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And can you recall any other experiences or encounters that you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
Okay, this is well. There's another one that goes back to Madison Franklin County line, and this is more in the fall. And I was camped out just right off the Ozark Highlands Trail down at Fly Gap. And this was kind of a vague deal as far as what I could see. It was nighttime. I had a campfire going, and I get that feeling like you get this feeling like what's looking at me or whatever. And I just noticed this one area off. It was just darker than the rest of the night. It was like not just black, but like the term pitch black inside of a cave or mine color black. Like there was no light going through there at all that you could see. And I just sat there with my back to the fire, occasionally pitching more wood on the fire, and stayed up all night. We were having like a staring contest, I guess.
Yeah. And can you describe anything from that experience as far as what it looked like?
No, it was like I said, just like a little dark, almost like a little dark cloud or mass. I couldn't make out anything. I couldn't make out anything. What's the term? Corporal, corporeal, if I'm pronouncing it right. You know, as a nothing manifested except just being completely dark. And I would like to say that I believe it had to do with a spirit of what was in that area, because there was a lot of possibly evil stuff that went in there before, during, and after while I was up there, or while. In fact, on Hare Mountain, as I heard stories about, there was the remnants of like a plantation house, and I was heard that where a bunch of slaves were rounded up and kept there to avoid being freed during the Civil War. That was one thing about Hare Mountain. The other thing about right where I was at is Madison County. I just hate to disparage an entire county, but at that time I was over there. At that time and before, that county has a reputation, and not much of it is good as far as how the county government and sheriff was. I don't know if anybody has heard any stories up here about it, but I can recommend a book that's off the topic of Sasquatch, but it's called When Money Grew on Trees, about stuff like that.
Yeah, so it was a corrupt area.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, I don't know how to make a comparison. I would say it would make what like man, I can't. I hate to do a fictional comparison, but it's like yeah, it that's an understatement, because there's some unsolved murders, drug dealing, corrupt government officials, at least back in that era. I can't speak for it now. That's why, in a way, I don't like to bring it up too much, because things I hopefully have changed for the better there. But yeah, it was. Yeah, this also starts getting into politics as far as one of the reasons I was over there. So,
No, I understand, and that's most of the U.S., my friend. Most of the world.
oh, oh yeah, I know. Oh, well, yeah, there was a lot of stuff. Does the word Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan ring any bells? Of course, this happened. I don't know how old you are, but this happened like some stuff like in the late 80s, early 90s. Somebody named James McDougal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was born in the early 90s, so.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just saying that yeah, I mean, that's when some of this was going on, or earlier.
Oh, okay.
I'll just say the Clinton years in Arkansas.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of this that I was actually doing was involved kind of politically. I knew somebody that was investigating that deal in Madison County later on. Him, an attorney, got appointed as a special prosecutor, and I think I'm okay. That's kind of like the person I was hauling hay for that I mentioned. And if I mention what I used to do, some people would balk at it because, okay, I'll just say it, FBI. But he was probably one of the rare good ones.
Yeah, it must be pretty rare then.
Oh yeah, exceedingly. When you're a field agent, special agent, and don't get advanced in rank for about 35 years until mandatory retirement age. And I found out later, and maybe this is, no, I can't go there, but I'll just say he got harassed a bit on the job. But oddly enough, he got one big letter of recommendation or award from J. Edgar Hoover because he solved the case out back east. So he was not, if he had all of a sudden tendered his resignation without any solid reason, it would have sent up a bunch of flags. So I won't say he was fireproof, but they tried to force him out several times. But it was like apparently I've heard secondhand that he'd go and say, okay, if this is being accused, I'll just turn in my badge and that, and say, no, wait,
Yeah.
But yeah, I know I don't want to get down to too much of a bunny trail and have people really doing double eye rolls or anything. But
No, you're fine, Edward, and you did an excellent job today at relaying your experiences and the encounters that took place on the property. So I really appreciate you for getting in contact with me and taking the time to share this with everyone here on Sasquatch Theory.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And thank you very much. And it was a pleasure speaking with you today. And if you encounter anything else in the future, feel free to reach back out to me, my friend.
Oh, I will. In fact, when I get the time to, I'm going to be out looking around here again, sticking my nose where it doesn't really belong.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. And be safe when you're out there.
Okay. Thank you. I will.
All right. Thank you. And you have an excellent day.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Edward, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with me. And I do believe that was a Sasquatch creature that was looking through the window. Of course, we can't really be sure because other cryptid creatures have been known to have red eyes. But the fact that it was looking through the window, that does sound like Bigfoot activity to me. And your mom saw a Sasquatch creature nearby. So that's probably what it was. We'll just say probably, most likely. Okay? But the dreams, that is strange. That does make me feel like there was possibly dogman activity taking place on the property. A lot of people have claimed that dogman can get into your dreams, but I'm not entirely sure. But it does mean a lot to me that you contacted me and you shared your experiences openly with everyone, and I know that took a lot of strength, so thank you. I appreciate everyone for listening today, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter, feel free to reach out sometime. I'd love to hear about it. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. And until the next one, be safe out in the forest.